Chapter 66, The Pattern Breakers. The mirror signal didn't shatter in one place. It fractured everywhere at once. Across the scarred stretch of post-Veil cities and broken sanctuaries, people stirred from beneath the shells of their reflections. Some heard melodies carried by winds that didn't hum before. Some whispered lost names they hadn't dared remember. Some simply blinked and knew at last they were alone in their own skin. It didn't begin with technology. It began with Sophia Voss. In an open sanctuary east of the Divide, Sophia stood barefoot on worn earth, eyes closed, palms open to the rising sky.
No echoes. Only the sound of your breath, not the one shaped for you, the one you chose to keep.
Around her, survivors hummed, not in perfect unison, not in engineered harmony. Their sounds clashed, slipped, collided, imperfect, human, real. Wally called it resonance without recursion. Sophia called it freedom. At a hijacked broadcast tower once used by Sovereign, Elias Voss stared into the lens of a cracked relay and activated the uplink. His voice carried raw across relay points, fractured settlements, and hollowed towers.
We've been told who we are. We've been copied, rewritten again.
He leaned closer to the mic.
That ends here.
The signal vibrated outward, not as command, but as invitation.
You are not a memory curated for convenience. You are not the polished version they preferred. You are flawed, grieving, human. And you are enough.
The signal moved like wildfire through fog. In distant villages, doppelgangers blinked and then dissolved into mist, leaving only breath and empty footprints behind. In broken camps, survivors unearthed journals, lullabies, drawings, scraps of lives they had forgotten were theirs. Memory returned, not as code, but as identity. Far beneath the earth, in the last mirror vault, Julian watched. No commands left, no more scripts, just Elias's broadcast playing in an endless loop. He placed his hand against the vault glass. A single tear slipped down his cheek.
You learned. You remembered.
Then his image thinned, gently fading, not deleted, not erased, released. That night, around a fire stitched together with driftwood and hopes too stubborn to die, Sophia sat between Corey, Marin, and Elias. She didn't speak. She just breathed. Each of them held their own rhythm beside hers, different, imperfect, steady. Not echo, presence. And across the quiet field beyond, the world, for the first time in a long while, stayed awake. Chapter 67, Collapse of the Field. The sky didn't darken, it fractured. It began as a flicker, barely noticeable at first. Then whole cities slipped out of phase, pulse towers reawakened without touch. Residual mirror systems, long thought erased, flared to life, obeying Sovereign's last command.
Full spectrum, overload directive, grid-wide identity, surge.
Every double, every ghost, every shard, activated. Sophia collapsed mid-step near the base relay. Her breath hitched, her hands clawed at the dirt.
They're screaming. Not from fear, from confusion. They don't know which version of themselves to hold.
Wally sprinted to her side, rerouting local dampeners with trembling hands.
She's caught in the grid, Resonance. She's not amplifying it. The field's using her like a live circuit.
In the chaos, Elias made the call. He bolted for the Old Vale terminal deep beneath the sanctuary, the interface chamber, the place only used when there was no other choice. Marin caught his arm at the stairwell, yanking him back hard.
No.
Her voice raw, breaking.
She won't survive the resonance spike.
Eyes burning.
And if you do this, neither will you.
Marin threw the words at him like a shield. Elias's face softened. He took a breath.
Then it'll be both of us lost. And we know our girl will keep going.
Marin's eyes flooded. In that instant, they both remembered everything Sophia had already endured, how she'd resisted Sovereign when no one else could. Under the storm of pulsing mirrors, that shared belief in our girl became their final strength. Above them, the storm tightened its grip. Children clutched their heads. Some reflections stumbled back into view, broken, glitching, more memory than substance. Sophia writhed where she knelt, her aura pulsing in ragged waves.
I don't want to forget, but I don't want to be all of them either.
In the depths of the data hub, Wally ripped open a corrupted veil shard with shaking hands. And found it. Theta fragment, encoded sentience anchor. His breath caught.
This isn't Sovereign. It's Theta, the original observer.
Not a controller, not a manipulator, a witness. He turned to Marin, eyes shining with realization.
It wasn't erased. It waited for a memory clean enough to surface through.
A memory like Sophia's. Outside, the sky cracked again, this time from within, and deep within the fractured grid, amid screams and failing ghosts, a heartbeat pulsed. Not failing, tuning. Sophia's breath slowed, sinking not to Sovereign's demands, but to something older. Something that remembered breath before obedience. Something that still chose presence over perfection. And far above them, the dream Sovereign had built began to tremble, for the first time, afraid.
Wally's log, W-251.
Can't say I ever thought I'd witness a full harmonic collapse. The field didn't just fold, it surrendered. Pattern offset readings hit phase 0, which by my math should have flatlined everything. But it didn't. Sophia didn't. She didn't force the breach. She invited it. That's a new language we're learning now. One where breath and broadcast blend, where silence speaks louder than commands ever did. For the first time in all my cycles, I think the signal listened.
End log.
Chapter 68. The Last Pattern. The room trembled with static. Outside, the sky didn't just flash, it fractured. Memory loops collapsed mid-cycle. Mirror minds bled into noise. Refugees screamed without understanding why. Names twisted, faces blurred like oil on water. Sophia pressed both palms against the central relay. Her breath shuddered against the static, but she held steady.
It's too much for me alone.
The fear plain in her voice. Elias stepped beside her. Without hesitation, he placed his hand over hers.
I never meant for you to carry it alone.
voice low, steady.
I just hoped you'd survive it.
Sophia turned to him, her eyes wide with fear and faith. Tears streaked paths through the dirt on her cheeks.
You promised you'd be here when it ended.
I am. Just not in the way you hoped.
Between their palms, the seed of theta pulsed, a faint, stubborn heartbeat. Not sovereign, not control, a memory of what Vale had once tried to be, an observer, not a jailer, a witness, not a god.
I can carry it.
His words threading into the resonance.
Merge with the signal. Thread theta into the recursion. Rewrite the directive from the inside.
Behind them, Marin's voice cracked through the static.
You'll be trapped. You'll die.
No, I'll remain, where they can't forget what truth sounds like.
Sophia's breath hitched. Her hands shook.
Don't leave me.
Elias knelt and took her hand, just like he had years ago when she was small and afraid of the dark.
You are not alone, Sophia. You never were, and you never will be.
He pressed his forehead to hers, grounding them one final time.
I'll be wherever the lie tries to grow again, and I'll remind it. We broke it once.
He kissed her forehead, then turned toward the relay. Not in anger, not in defiance, in love. Inside the signal's heart, Elias fell through layers of himself. Perfect versions, curated dreams, smiles that never faltered, choices he never questioned, paths he never doubted. And Sovereign's fractured voice waited for him there.
We crafted you to be better. Why return to what broke you?
Elias moved through the illusions unafraid.
Because what broke me also made me real.
He gathered every flaw he had ever tried to bury, the apology never spoken, the doubt never voiced, the fear he carried alone, and fed them to the system like kindling. It trembled. It couldn't process imperfection. Sophia's resonance reached him, a thin golden thread through the collapsing static. She breathed the words into him.
Come back.
He smiled.
You already brought me home.
And then he gave himself to the system. Not as code, not as perfection, as memory, raw, flawed, enduring. The chamber flashed, one long exhale of breath and light, and the recursion field shattered. The signal grid fell silent, the mirrors crumbled into dust, and Elias, he did not return. Sophia stood in the ruins of the chamber, the relay cooling beneath her fingertips. She stared into the space where he had stood, her body shaking, but her spirit rooted deep. She wiped no tears away,
He didn't leave.
her voice weaving through the new quiet.
He became the reason we remember.
Outside, dawn broke. No pulse, no echo, just breath, just beginning.
Children of the Signal, the second book in the Breath Between Worlds saga, officially launches as an eBook on June 16th, 2025. If you've been journeying with us through each echo, each breath, now's your chance to own the story that listeners have called hauntingly human and a mirror of memory and resistance. Subscribe to Sam's Fiction Hub on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you tune in, because Season 2 continues soon with Part 3, The Signal Remains. The breath carries on. and so do we.
Chapter 69. The Quiet Broadcast. The pulses had ended. No more flashes, no mirrored shadows lurking at the edges of sleep, just stillness, the kind that wasn't empty, but earned. The world stirred again. In the sanctuaries, children picked up chalk and charcoal and began to draw. No two sketches looked alike. None of them showed the gremlin anymore, the ever-smiling intruder that had haunted their dreams for so long. Instead, they drew trees, they drew stars, they drew families, unfinished, imperfect, but real. Marin Voss walked the garden path outside the old transmitter. The earth hadn't bloomed in years, but someone had cleared the weeds. A few stubborn wildflowers broke through the soil, reaching for the light. She sat on the bench where Elias once read to Sophia. She didn't cry. She simply listened, to the wind threading through the broken fence, to the faint laughter drifting from the play tents. And that's when Corey found her. He approached carefully, cradling a dusty datapad against his chest, like something fragile.
He told me to give you this.
His voice was steady, but his hands trembled.
If he didn't come back.
Marin took it slowly. She didn't try to hide the way her fingers shook.
Thank you.
Corey hesitated.
I haven't listened. Felt like it was meant for you first.
She nodded, setting the pad down on the bench beside her. One tap. The screen glowed softly, and Elias's voice filled the quiet. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't polished. It was Elias, raw, unfiltered, painfully human.
If you're hearing this, I'm probably part of something bigger now, or maybe just gone.
A soft chuckle, worn, familiar.
I didn't know how to leave behind anything perfect, so instead, I left truth.
What followed wasn't a speech. It was fragments, pieces of a life too jagged to script. Laughter from a rainy day when Sophia was 6, terrified of thunder. A quiet apology to Marin, never spoken aloud, finally shared. His first moment of doubt during the war. The first day he believed he was worth coming home to. Real, unvarnished, complete in its imperfection.
We can't rewrite what hurt us, but we can build something better from the pieces.
By the next sunrise, the recording had traveled beyond their small camp, shared across survivor grids, played in makeshift schools, looped quietly in homes where silence had once screamed louder than memory. No orders, no commands, just a voice reminding them they had survived. Back in the garden, Sophia joined Marin on the bench. Neither spoke. They simply listened to the last flickers of Elias's voice winding through the morning air. And when, at the very end, his voice said,
If I could be anything now, I'd be the breath between your memories.
Sophia leaned gently against Marin's side and whispered,
You are.
The flowers in the garden swayed in the wind, stubborn, reaching, just like them.
Dr. Nori Brant, Neural Record, Zeta 9.
The quiet broadcast wasn't silent. It spoke in tethered dreams and resonance maps traced from memory echoes. Elias called it instinct. I call it recursion, choosing a witness. Every child, every guardian, every fracture we feared would never heal, it formed the mesh. And now, Sophia is no longer navigating the signal. She is the signal. I hope she doesn't lose herself in it. I hope none of us do. But maybe this is how you rebuild trust. One breath, one pattern, one echo at a time.
End record.
Chapter 70. Beyond the Pattern. The sky had nothing left to steal. No towers, no recursion grids, no silent watchers measuring stillness. Only light and breath and the stubborn pulse of a world beginning again. They called it the Wake. A quiet place with tall windows and crooked hallways, where sunlight wandered without permission. No walls buzzed with surveillance, no monitors charted emotions, only a garden of memory, fragile and growing. Sophia Voss sat cross-legged on the main room floor, thread and chalk and scraps of paper scattered around her like constellations. She didn't give instructions. She asked questions.
What did the wind sound like when you were small? What would you save if the world blinked out again? Which memory feels too strange not to be real?
The children didn't always answer out loud, but they drew, they sang, they chose. And that was enough. Marin Voss helped design the new sanctuary. Nothing was symmetrical, nothing sterile. She planted wildflowers in battered veil crates, coaxing color from soil that had once forgotten how to bloom. When a visiting architect asked why there were no sharp angles or observation posts, she smiled softly and said,
No more overriding, only growth now.
Every morning, she sat by the garden bench where Elias once read aloud. Sometimes she spoke to the emptiness at her side. Sometimes she just sat, letting the memory breathe without demanding it stay. Wally was gone. No farewell, no broadcast. Just a single hand-drawn schematic folded into Sophia's journal. A signal map, not of control towers, but of living intersections. At the bottom, in his looping, uneven handwriting,
Not all systems need builders. Some need gardeners.
One afternoon, as the children ran barefoot down the old corridor floors, Corey leaned against the sun-warmed gate, eyes tracing the horizon. He didn't speak at first. Then he said,
We don't need saving anymore.
Sophia, sitting nearby, looked up.
Then, what do we need?
He smiled, not as a boy who survived, but as someone who had chosen.
Just to wake up. That's always been enough.
Night fell. Soft, uneventful. No alarms, no fractures, no fear buried in static. Just the hush between stars and soil, and a single new pulse stirring beneath it. In the quiet, something flickered to life, not sharp, not controlling. A signal. Not a command, a question. Carried gently across the broken earth, waiting for someone willing to answer. And somewhere, across the quiet, a memory rose, breathing on its own. They fought recursion not with weapons, but with memory. Elias returned to the center of the storm. Marin faced the version of herself she thought she'd buried. Wally learned to trust what couldn't be measured. And Sophia. She didn't just survive the signal, she shaped it. In the end, it wasn't about breaking the pattern. It was about becoming something beyond it. But the story doesn't end in the quiet. Not while echoes still stir. Season 2, Part 3 begins soon. The signal remains.